Well, greetings to my good friends in the Ukraine. Natalia asked me to make this video for you, so here it is. By the way, the shirt I'm wearing says physics is the law, everything else is a recommendation. So I put together a few slides that I think hope you'll find useful. And let's see if this will work. Yeah, there we are. Let me get this out of the way. I don't know if it's showing that or not. So Natalia asked me to talk a little bit about the 4D system. It's an incredibly powerful thing. In fact, it's the only thing out there that works. And I'll just introduce you to the core idea here. It's kind of my own, the idea of social context fields that affect human behaviors the same way that gravitational fields affect matter and electromagnetic fields affect charged particles and magnetized particles. So you can read about this. I'll provide lots of things. I can do Zooms. I've got some videos on YouTube. And I wanted to talk a little bit about my view of the Ukraine. In 2020, our first trip was going to be to visit you folks. As you know, this got derailed by COVID. We like this part of the world. We're at a plan. Everything but air tickets was done to go through Istanbul. As you know, you've got a World Heritage Site. They wanted to help Natalia establish 4D in Ukraine. I have some sense of what's happening for you because I spent 3 weeks traveling in Romania. It's a very interesting country, and the main problem is it's been overrun by other neighbors many times, something you probably have experienced also. And in 2019, we spent 3 weeks in the Baltic states. And there we got very firsthand accounts of what the Russians are capable of doing, the horrible things. So our hearts go out to you guys. I thought the Iraq War was the last kinetic land war. You know, the U.S. military had tanks firing uranium bullets guided by radar over the horizon. I didn't think we'd ever see this again. The best thing I know to do for you is give you a simple and useful tool to help yourselves and others through this very troubling time. So what I'm going to talk about is one of my favorite ideas, the idea of addressing unfortunate realities with a mindset of 100% commitment. So why address unfortunate realities? First, you've got to move through losses, and the only way you can do that is to mourn them. And if you pretend they don't exist, that doesn't work. And second, when you see what the realities are, it will inform your necessary actions. And this mindset of 100% commitment, which is actually a complete focus on what you're doing, sports team players know how to do this, aircraft pilots know how to do it, musicians know how to do it. But what we're going to talk about here is how this focus alters your perception in everyday life to reveal solutions and give you the courage to act. So unfortunate realities, I'm going to offer these with great humility. Humans are above all tribal. We are the most social animals on the planet. And stronger tribes historically use force to take what they want from weaker tribes. Example around where I live is the way Europeans destroyed the Native American culture, first by killing their food source, which was buffalo or bisons, and then annihilating their culture. What happened after the Soviet Union fell, I believe, is that Ukraine turned west and Russia turned east. Russia's legitimate worry here is they fear a land invasion and they have no geological boundaries. If you look at maps of most of the world, or Europe, for example, you'll see most of the national boundaries are set by mountains and rivers, this kind of thing. And during this long period called Pax Americana, or whatever you want to call it, we had a time where laws were enforced and people weren't invading each other. And Russia has been invaded maybe, I don't know, 50 times in their history over land. And their greatest defense has been geology. It stopped Napoleon, it stopped Hitler. So what they're trying to do is get this land back. And moreover, Russia wants your beautiful land, your resources, your farms, your natural resources. And unfortunately, they're just going to take them if they can. And there's no obvious way this war ends soon or ends well. I'm sorry this happened, and we here in the West, and particularly in the US, are doing everything we can short of nuclear war to help you guys out of this dilemma. So I want to use personal examples when I talk about things. On October 17th of 2020, this was our home. That was my office in the house. The next day, it looked like this: utter, total destruction from a wildfire. So let's look at some of the unfortunate realities. Our house was in a FireWise rated neighborhood. There's actually a sign as you enter the little development we live in. And we believed the house could not burn down. Well, the reason it did is we have had a drought ongoing here for many years. There's lots of flammable material. Nothing, our house was as fireproof as it could be, and nothing around our house was flammable. What happened was we had a 100 kilometer Chinook wind, which is not uncommon here. The wind comes down the backside of the mountains. A tinder went off, and there was a hail of embers that impacted. And in our area, our little development of 7 houses, all 3 of the highest ones burned to the ground. The 3 lowest ones were unaffected, and there was nothing we could have done about this. There's no way to protect this house, except one thing, and that was to keep embers out of the attic. I had put special screens, but obviously not enough. So this was beyond. The unfortunate reality is that a flammable house is vulnerable to this condition, and nothing you can do certain to remedy that. Although I'll show you later, we are rebuilding a house that I believe cannot burn down. In one day, we lost all of our valuable possessions. My wife and I both are sort of the repositories for our families. There are things going back many, many years. And we travel a lot. I've actually visited 145 countries. We brought many things home from all around the world. They're all gone. And the other unfortunate reality, mitigator, I guess, is just stuff. That's all it is. And our insurance coverage on our house is far below the cost to rebuild. The cost of building houses has gone up very dramatically here in the last 5 years, and almost nobody kept up with insurance, especially if you don't think your house is going to burn down. However, we have significant savings. That we're frugal people. We save money, and we've got some capacity to respond. Some other things that I think is I find helpful to attend to in my thinking. The house was unsuitable to aging. It was nothing was wheelchair compatible. The steep mountain drive was highly problematic in the winter. My COVID-19 and my age is making maintenance of this old aging house much more problematic. I had a place with rotting wood on the side, and I called a painter in Boulder in about, I guess, maybe September of 2020, the year before, months before the house burned down, and asked the painter if he could repair this. He said, "Sure, I can do this. You don't want it this year, do you?" And finally, with us aging, we have to move sooner or later. So here's how this works. If you address unfortunate realities with the mindset of 100% commitment, and the 4D system uses the organizing system to simplify things, and so we can break mindset, another word for that is attitude, I like mindset better, into 2 pieces you can measure and manage: your emotions and your thoughts, which I call storylines. This is inspiring to me. This is Viktor Frankl, a psychologist who was locked in to a concentration camp for most of World War II. Everything can be taken from a man but one thing: the last of human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any one set of circumstances. So I'm going to invite you to think about that. I'm going to show you the empowering mindset that we used to move forward after the fire. I think the most important thing is to be grateful and pay attention to what you have. By the way, where you put your attention is very important. If you pay attention to what you have instead of what you don't have, life is better. First thing is, my wife and I have each other. We have our health. We escaped unharmed. Our family and friends are behind us 100%. And we have emotional and financial resources. Our green storylines were free of stuff. It's kind of interesting. I was ill some years ago, and we decided to move to Japan and found we had so much stuff we were immobile. We couldn't store it any place in a smaller house. we remain able to respond to what's happening, and we can build fresh, happy lives. So we're 100% committed to building an energy efficient elder house the wildlife cannot burn down. There it is. That's the state of it now. Just FYI, these are stones out here. This siding is all concrete. The roof cannot burn. The attic is sealed. The inside structure is all non-flammable materials, or as close to that as you can get, what they call 1 hour fire rated. The garage door is steel. The garage roof is steel, on and on. So we escaped from this, and I want you to think about the fact that if you do these things, address unfortunate realities with a mindset of 100% commitment, you can do as much as you can with what's going on in your country. We're going to move in, hopefully in about 6 weeks. I don't think much longer. So I like to have some fun with you in these things. This is from a U.S. movie. It's about a dude ranch. I like to joke that there are many famous philosophers in the world, and this is philosophy out where I live, where we have cows all around and ranches.
See, now that's great. Your life makes sense to you. What's so funny?
You city folk, you worry about a lot of shit, don't you?
Shit.
Yeah.
My wife basically told me she doesn't want me around.
She ready.
I'm just saying.
How old are you? 38.
39.
Yeah. You all come up here about the same age, same problems. Spend about 50 weeks a year getting knots in your rope, and then you think 2 weeks up here, long time for you. None of you get it. You know what the secret of life is?
No, what?
This.
Your finger?
One thing. Just one thing. You stick to that and everything else don't mean shit.
That's great, but what's the one thing?
That's what you've got to figure out.
So if I could tell you one thing that would make your life and your efforts to help other people successful, it would be this: find the outcomes you're committed to realizing, and focus accordingly. I know this now. Every man gives his life for what he is committed to. Every woman gives her life for what she is committed to. Sometimes people are committed to little or nothing, and so they give their life to little or nothing. One life is all we have, and we live it as we are committed to living it, and then it's gone. To surrender who you are and live without commitment is more terrible than dying, even more terrible than dying young. So, should you commit yourself 100% to helping people through this crisis? Here's a few tests I think that are useful. The first is, are the benefits significant enough to proceed, even if your likelihood of success is low? I think that's a check mark for you. Is it the right thing to do? And one of the things I look at here is whose interests are being served. If it's serving your own interests, then you should take a deeper look. What the work you're doing is serving other people's interests, you can put a check by that, I think. Are you competent to undertake this? I think you surely are. Do the people you depend on want you to succeed? Of course they do. Can you accept and deal with the fear you might fail? I think you can. So people often ask me, they say, how do I know if I'm 100% committed? I said, what we're doing here is we're altering perception. We're altering the way your mind processes information. So look at how things appear to you. And this is a very simple case, lots of fun. Up until about 6 or 7 years ago, I was not 100% committed to diet. So if I went into a place where they had this meatball sandwich and a salad, this always looked like the choice I wanted. About 7, 8 years ago, I made this commitment to myself and brought this focus for the sake of my health and longevity. And now when I see the two things, I want to eat this. The sandwich doesn't look good anymore. That's how this works. So I'm going to leave you with this and ask you to go reflect yourself and see what you're committed to in your life with regard to the work you're doing. If you can find a way to bring your complete focus into that item and push everything else aside, this is a magical thing that works. This is the methodology that I used to fix Hubble Space Telescope, to get $20 billion for space astrophysics, and more recently to move through our house burning down and make a brand new, better place for us to live. So I like this quote from this sociologist. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. Never doubt that this small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can help the folks survive this war in the Ukraine. Indeed, you might be the only people that ever will. And thank you for listening. My pleasure to talk with you. I'm happy to Zoom with any of you anytime and send you all the intellectual materials. And be safe, and thank you. Take care. Now I'll stop this thing.